The Discovery. The monitoring station Horizon's Edge drifted silently through the void, its sensors perpetually scanning the darkness between stars. Commander Sarah Chen floated through the observation deck, her magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal floor as she reviewed the night's data streams. For 3 years, she'd commanded this remote outpost at the edge of human-controlled space. And for 3 years, nothing remarkable had happened. Until tonight. The anomaly appeared on her screen as a faint pulse, barely distinguishable from cosmic background radiation. But there was something about its pattern that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. It was structured, deliberate, and hauntingly familiar. She pulled herself into the command chair and began isolating the signal, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface with practiced precision. Computer, run pattern analysis on signal designation Alpha 77, she commanded, her voice steady despite the excitement building in her chest. The results came back immediately, and Sarah's eyes widened. It was a human distress beacon, but the encoding was ancient, at least 200 years old by her estimation. The signal originated from a sector that had been marked as lost during the Great Expansion, when humanity's first wave of colony ships had ventured into the unknown. Sarah activated the station's long-range communication array and sent an encrypted message to Fleet Command. But she knew it would take days for a response, and the signal was weakening. Every instinct honed through years of military service told her to wait for backup, but something deeper, something fundamentally human, urged her to act. She made her decision in the span of a heartbeat. Within an hour, Sarah had prepped her personal scout ship, the Defiant Spirit, and plotted a course toward the signal's origin. The journey took 18 hours at maximum burn, pushing the small vessel's engines to their limits. As she dropped out of hyperspace, her sensors immediately detected 2 massive shapes floating in the darkness. The first was unmistakably human in design, a colony ship from Earth's golden age of exploration. Its hull bore the faded letters TRS New Horizon, along with the old Earth Federation seal. The second vessel made Sarah's blood run cold. The alien ship was sleek and predatory, its biomechanical hull pulsing with an eerie green light. Sarah recognized the design immediately as belonging to the Kralith Consortium, a species known for their salvage operations and their particular interest in human technology. They were already extending cutting beams toward the derelict colony ship, preparing to slice it apart for scrap. Sarah opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all frequencies. Kralith vessel, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran, Republic. That ship is human property under Galactic Salvage Law, Article 7. Cease your salvage operations immediately. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had faced down pirates and worse in the outer territories. The response came quickly, transmitted in perfect, if somewhat stilted, human speech. Commander Chen, this vessel has been derelict for 200 solar cycles. It is abandoned property under consortium law. We have prior claim. The voice belonged to Salvage Master Thexnil, whose reputation Sarah knew well. The Kralith were methodical, logical, and utterly without mercy when it came to salvage rights. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. The Kralith ship outgunned her scout vessel by a factor of 10, and she couldn't match them in a direct confrontation. But humans hadn't survived and thrived in the galaxy by playing fair. They'd done it by being unpredictable, adaptable, and occasionally completely insane. By alien standards, Sarah smiled grimly and executed a maneuver that would have made her academy instructors either proud or horrified. She fired her emergency beacon directly at the colony ship's hull, the magnetic anchor embedding itself deep in the ancient metal. Then, before the Kralith could react, she triggered her ship's emergency evacuation protocol, launching herself in an escape pod directly toward the derelict vessel. It was a move so illogical, so utterly reckless, that the Kralith salvage crew simply stopped what they were doing to watch. Sarah's pod crashed through a weakened section of the colony ship's hull, her emergency suit protecting her from the worst of the impact. She picked herself up, activated her helmet's lights, and began making her way through the dark corridors. The ship's emergency power was still functioning, casting everything in a dim red glow. She followed the layout common to all Earth vessels of that era, heading toward the command center. What she found there stopped her in her tracks. The bridge was intact, and more importantly, the crew was still there. Dozens of cryopods lined the walls, their status lights blinking a steady green. They were alive. 200 years in deep sleep, but alive. Sarah's hands shook as she accessed the nearest console, her military override code somehow still working on the ancient system. The ship's logs told a story of desperation and hope. The New Horizon had been part of the third wave colonization effort, carrying 10,000 colonists to a promised new world. But something had gone wrong with their navigation system, sending them off course into uncharted space. Rather than risk running out of supplies, the crew had put everyone into emergency cryosleep and set the ship to broadcast a distress signal. They had been waiting for rescue for 2 centuries. Sarah's communication device crackled to life. "Commander Chen, your actions are most irregular. We are boarding the vessel to retrieve you. Resistance would be inadvisable." Thexanil's voice carried a hint of confusion. The Kralith couldn't understand why a human would risk their life for a derelict ship, but Sarah wasn't finished being unpredictable. She accessed the colony ship's ancient communication system and began broadcasting on an open channel, not to the Kralith, but to every human vessel, station, and outpost within 1,000 light years. Her message was simple but powerful. "This is Commander Sarah Chen. I've found the lost colony ship New Horizon. 10,000 human souls are still alive, waiting for rescue. I am claiming this vessel under the right of first discovery and invoking the Prometheus Protocol. Any attempt to board or salvage this ship will be considered an act of war against the Terran Republic." The Prometheus Protocol was something most aliens didn't understand about humans. It was a sacred law, written into the very foundation of human space law. No human would be left behind, no matter the cost, no matter the time. Sarah could already see the indicators on her console showing human ships changing course, burning hard toward her position. The closest was still hours away, but the message had been received. The awakening. The Kralith boarding party found Sarah in the cryo bay, standing guard over the sleeping colonists, with nothing but an emergency plasma cutter and sheer determination. Thexanil himself led the group, his forearms moving in what Sarah recognized as frustration. The salvage master's transparent helmet revealed features that were vaguely insectoid, with compound eyes that reflected the dim emergency lighting in dozens of facets. "Commander Chen," Thexanil began, his translator, rendering his clicks and whistles into measured English, "you cannot seriously expect to defend this entire vessel alone. Our scans show 10,043 humans in cryogenic suspension. They have been abandoned for 2 centuries. Under consortium law, they are salvage." Sarah raised the plasma cutter, its beam casting dancing shadows on the walls. "They're not salvage, they're people, and they're under my protection." She knew the gesture was largely symbolic, but symbols mattered, especially when dealing with aliens who struggled to understand human psychology. What happened next surprised everyone, including Sarah. One of the cryopods began its revival sequence, lights shifting from green to amber. The pod's occupant was walking up, 200 years after going to sleep. Sarah moved to the pod, reading the nameplate, Captain Marcus Rivera, commanding officer of the New Horizon. The revival process would take several minutes, but someone had triggered it remotely. Thexanil's compound eyes swiveled in confusion. "This is impossible. The ship's systems are non-functional. Who initiated the revival sequence?" Sarah smiled, remembering something from her xenology classes. The Kralith were brilliant engineers, but they thought in straight lines, logical progressions from point A to point B. Humans, on the other hand, had a talent for lateral thinking that often confounded other species. "The ship's AI," she said simply. "It's been listening to our conversation. These old colony ships had learning systems designed to adapt and protect their cargo. You've been talking about salvaging the ship, and it decided to wake its captain." The pod hissed open, releasing clouds of vapor that had been frozen for centuries. Captain Rivera emerged slowly, his muscles weak from the long sleep, but his eyes sharp and alert. He was a man in his 50s, with gray streaking through his dark hair and the bearing of someone used to command. Sarah helped him stand, quickly briefing him on the situation in hushed tones. Rivera listened, nodded, and then turned to face the Kralith salvage crew. When he spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, but carried an authority that transcended species. I am Captain Marcus Rivera, lawful commander of the Earth Federation ship New Horizon. I have not abandoned my vessel or my colonists. We are not salvage, we are survivors. Thexanil's translator clicked and whirred as he processed this. Captain Rivera, you have been asleep for 200 years. Earth Federation no longer exists. Your government, your nation, your world as you knew it, all gone. You have no legal standing. Rivera's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. Then let me explain something about humans that you might have forgotten, he said, moving to one of the bridge consoles. His fingers moved across the ancient interface with surprising speed. We don't give up. Ever. And we prepare for everything. The lights throughout the ship suddenly blazed to life, emergency power giving way to full illumination. Systems that had been dormant for centuries hummed back to life. The Kralith boarding party stepped back in alarm as automated defense turrets emerged from hidden panels, tracking their movement. Rivera had awakened more than just himself. He'd awakened the ship. Impossible, Thexanil stated, his compound eyes reflecting his disbelief. Your technology is 2 centuries obsolete. Your power cores should be depleted. This ship should be dead. Rivera actually laughed, a sound that seemed to unsettle the Kralith even more. You're thinking like an engineer, not like a human. Yes, our main power cores are depleted, but every colony ship carried seeds, biological samples, and everything needed to start a new world. Including, he paused for dramatic effect, bacteriological fuel cells designed to convert any organic matter into power. This ship has been feeding on cosmic dust and micrometeorites for 200 years, slowly charging backup systems I doubt your scans even detected. Sarah watched with admiration as Rivera bluffed with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush, even though she suspected half the systems he was activating were running on emergency power that wouldn't last more than a few hours. But the Kralith didn't know that, and human unpredictability was working in their favor. The captain continued, Now, I'm going to start waking my colonists, all 10,000 of them, and Commander Chen here has already invoked the Prometheus protocol, which means every human ship in this sector is heading here right now. You can either be remembered as the salvage crew that tried to scrap 10,000 sleeping humans, or you can be the ones who helped in the greatest rescue operation in human history. Your choice. Thexanil's forearms moved in what Sarah recognized as the Kralith equivalent of deep thought. The salvage master was running calculations, probabilities, cost-benefit analyses, but he was also smart enough to recognize when he was out of his depth. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy for being unreasonably stubborn when it came to protecting their own, and fighting them over it rarely ended well for anyone. Perhaps, Thexanil said slowly, we could come to an arrangement. The consortium is always interested in human technology, even obsolete examples, and we have resources that could help in reviving your colonists safely. Rivera and Sarah exchanged glances. This was the opening they needed. What kind of arrangement? Sarah asked, lowering her plasma cutter slightly. Over the next several hours, as more colonists were carefully awakened and human ships began arriving, an unlikely alliance formed. The Kralith provided medical supplies and modern equipment to help with the revival process, while Rivera shared something far more valuable than the ship's obsolete technology: human creativity. He showed them how the colonists had modified their cryopods to run on minimal power, how they'd created redundant systems using nothing but basic materials, and how they'd essentially turned their colony ship into a self-sustaining organism that could survive centuries in the void. It was engineering, but not as the Kralith understood it. It was human engineering. Messy, chaotic, inefficient by any logical standard, but somehow utterly effective. As the rescue operation continued, Sarah stood with Captain Rivera on the observation deck, watching human and Kralith crews working side by side. "You know," Rivera said quietly, "when we went to sleep, first contact with aliens was still just a dream. We prepared for everything we could imagine. But not this." Sarah smiled. "How do you prepare for something you can't imagine?" "You don't," Rivera replied, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "You just adapt. It's what humans do best. We make it up as we go along, and somehow it works out." The New Horizons colonists were eventually transferred to modern ships, their 2-century journey finally at an end. The colony ship itself was gifted to the Kralith as a gesture of goodwill, but only after Rivera had secretly shown Sarah the real treasure. Hidden in the ship's computer core were the complete cultural archives of Earth as it had existed 200 years ago. Music, literature, art, and history that had been thought lost forever. As Sarah watched the last of the colonists board the rescue ships, Thexneil approached her. "Commander Chen, I must ask, when you launched yourself at the derelict ship, did you know the colonists were still alive?" Sarah shook her head. "No, I didn't know anything for certain. I just had a feeling, and I acted on it." The salvage master's compound eyes shifted in what might have been bewilderment. "You risked your life on a feeling?" "That's what makes us human," Sarah replied. "We don't always need logic or certainty. Sometimes we just need hope and a little bit of crazy." As the fleet departed, carrying 10,000 souls back to civilization, the story of the New Horizons spread throughout human space and beyond. It became a legend, a reminder that humans would never stop looking for their lost children no matter how long it took. And for the other species of the galaxy, it was another example of humanity's most baffling and powerful trait: their absolute refusal to give up on each other. The Kralith Consortium would later record this event in their archives with a special notation. When dealing with humans, always account for the impossible. They have a disturbing tendency to make it possible.